Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on another Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you are all staying safe and healthy during this challenging time. I know many of you are probably working from home and under shelter-in-place orders by your various mayors or county officials, and maybe perhaps trying to find ways to make the best of things during this kind of odd time, maybe reconnecting with family or friends, serving your neighbors, catching up on movies or books that you've been saving for a rainy day, and this would be, I think, considered a rainy day. So I'm glad that you've and thankful that you've made this podcast part of this time for you. And we want to continue to do our part to provide Monday Mentor podcasts, Movie Verdict podcasts, and continue to give you stuff to listen to that will be helpful to you, also enjoyable. And so we are glad that you're here. Well, today's interview we did record prior to the outbreak, and so that won't be a topic of discussion, but our guest, Matt Greenberg, is one that you'll definitely want to hear. Matt is a personal injury trial attorney at Zehl law firm in Houston, where he has recovered record-setting verdicts and settlements for individuals who have been injured or killed in a number of different tragic circumstances. Matt has also hired and trained associates at multiple firms over the years, and he has some great thoughts to share on those topics as well. So let's hop into our conversation with Houston lawyer Matt Greenberg. We're excited that you're with us today on a Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Matt Greenberg joins us now. Matt, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Daniel.
Well, I mentioned in our introduction a few things about you and the firm, but would love to just hear from you to kind of start us off here. Why don't you tell us about you, about your firm, and what you're up to over there?
Sure. I currently an associate attorney at Zehl Associates in Houston, Texas, and our firm handles complex personal injury cases from industrial and plant explosions, Greyhound bus crashes, Jones Act, maritime cases, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you, and I'm glad that you said that you were an associate. Obviously, most of the folks that we've been talking to so far on the show have been partners, have been practicing for a long time. You've been practicing for a while. You're not a brand new associate, of course. But I wanted folks to be able to get your perspective from having kind of just gone through the gauntlet over the last 7-8 years of being a young associate. And so I appreciate you saying that, and I want to get that that type of perspective for folks in the audience. Before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit too about just what's happening in the space of kind of mass tort plaintiff's work in Houston, kind of what's going on in that general practice area and industry that you're kind of paying attention to or keeping an eye on?
So right now, I think the interesting development in kind of what I've been doing is automation. So artificial intelligence. So, I do a lot of commercial trucking cases, 18-wheeler cases, and a lot of commercial freight that is being moved is starting to change over to automated programs. So even companies like Uber or Tesla, they're going to start not only having electric vehicles, but automated vehicles. And so, trucking is the way that the majority of the freight is moved in America.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of accidents and crashes that happens with that. And so, oftentimes we focus on what the individual did wrong. And there's a lot of problems in the field with specific individuals who go over their hours, who violate the federal motor carrier safety regulations. And a lot of the focus you put on the case, you start off focusing on the driver, what he did wrong, and then you start looking at the corporate negligence that led the driver to those mistakes. Well, that's all going to change when there's no driver in the front seat of that tractor trailer anymore.
Yeah, right.
So that's something, that is it's being announced. We haven't had any cases come through of any kind of automated crashes, but that's a whole other way to look at those kind of cases.
Yeah, for sure. That will change the game quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, as you think back, not too long ago, as we were just talking about, to when you first got started as an associate, I know you were at a different firm then, but in the same general practice area. What are some things that you learned in those first few years of practice that stay with you today and are going to be just part of who you are as a lawyer over the course of your career?
I would say the first thing is find a good mentor. I would almost caution people who are just graduating out of law school to be very choosy about who you're working for as your first job. So you want a good job, you want a high-paying job, or you want a job that fits your interest. But I would also look at the lawyer that you're going to be directly working under who's going to teach you how to practice law. I'd be very picky about who that is. I was very lucky to, right out of law school, go work for Ed Blizzard and Scott Neighbors, who I think are fantastic trial lawyers, some of the country's best. Also, they're very ethical people. So they not only taught me how to practice law, they told me how to do it the right way. I think that is really something to look at. You may have a great opportunity with a not so great person. I would hesitate on that. I learned so much from being in the room with those caliber trial lawyers that I think that really gave me a leg up. Yeah,
no, that's great advice. And I know it's a question that young lawyers especially ask a lot about in terms of, even if they're in a firm and practicing and maybe have a few different partners they get work from, how to kind of go about specifically engaging with a particular partner to kind of become their mentor. What advice might you have for somebody that's in a firm that has identified someone that they want to kind of be their mentor at that stage of their career, to kind of approach that person and kind of start that process of seeing if they'd be willing to do that and be that mentor for them?
I mean, I would think, don't just come out and say, "Will you be my mentor?"
That's what. Let's talk about.
Maybe that would work. I think it's a little odd. I think it's like asking an older person out on a date or something. So I think. I think if you can identify a project that partner is either working on or going to be working on, do some of your own research, become interested in the issues. That it may be a complex issue. Try to find something that you can offer, and then approach that partner and just offer your help. And that's what I would say. It can be. I would try to narrow it down to one particular thing that maybe looks a little bit more complicated than the others, and just say, "Hey, if you're up for it, I would love to handle that for you, to give you everything you need to tackle that issue." So then you can prove yourself that you know what you're doing on a very discrete issue. And, once you're given a little and you do well with that, maybe you're given a little bit more.
Yeah. And so it sounds like your approach and your advice is more, like not approach it from kind of a distinct, separate relationship from the working relationship, like be my mentor, I'm going to be your mentee. It's more just sort of having that mentorship come as a byproduct of doing work for that person and being part of that person's practice.
Yeah, I mean, if you go up to somebody and say, "Will you be my mentor?" I think a very stressed out, overwhelmed partner is going to hear, "Will you take on another giant responsibility?"
Right.
And they may be getting that offer from several people at the firm, and they probably can't juggle all that. But if you're going to be able to learn from somebody by working with them, and if you want to work with somebody in particular, I think that's a good way of going about it.
Yeah, good. All right, well, cool. Is there anything else that you learned over the last few years of practice that you'd want to share with the audience?
Well, one thing that I think I've been able to benefit from is having good staff members around. As a young lawyer, you may think, the title of lawyer and your JD entitles you to feel superior to your staff, but the exact opposite needs to be true. You need to realize that your staff knows so much more than you. It's just not. Even I was lucky enough, I feel like, to go to Baylor that really helped us identify ways to be trial lawyers and kind of prepare us for that. But there's so many nuts and bolts of practicing that you as a lawyer may never know, and your staff is going to know completely. And so from my perspective, I have a paralegal now that I wouldn't trade for the world.
Yeah.
And so if she left, I might leave too. So I think opening yourself up to advice and kind of critiques from your staff is going to help you be a better lawyer.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That's really good. Now, you and I have had the chance to work together in the past on hiring, and you've gone through that process before. And again, kind of referring back to the fact that you are still a young lawyer, really, in the course of your career, but you've already had that experience, which is really neat. I want to ask you just about the process of as you've gone through and hired folks and either screened, resumes and then conducted interviews. What are a couple of things that you've picked up on in just documents in resumes and cover letters that are important or mistakes that you see or things that you kind of have clued in on?
I would say the first thing that I look for is somebody who is a good writer. You can teach almost everything else of the practice, but you can't. You don't have time to teach somebody to be a good writer.
Right.
So if I see high A's or good grades in writing programs, I think that helps. Even if just everything looks competent, your writing sample is strong. Just from the paper perspective, that goes a long way.
Yeah, I know that makes total sense. And I was going to ask you specifically about the writing samples because I know there's some mixed opinions about how valuable that is, just because you may not know, how edited those have been, or how much the person's actually written it completely themselves, or whatever. Have you found writing samples to be helpful and predictive of their actual writing ability?
I think so.
Yeah.
You can. I would say if you're looking at candidates, you can ask them for their most recent writing project.
Yeah.
Something maybe that they haven't had time to spend hours critiquing or kind of revising.
Yeah, that's good.
Also, you can ask for different kinds of things, besides, especially if you're hiring somebody in their second summer, and you can ask for first summer work, that they are able to share. Just kind of get a broad sense of their writing abilities.
Yeah.
I also would. It doesn't. Maybe other people disagree, but I don't care what you did in high school. So I see a lot of resumes that say, captain of the varsity football team or debate champ in high school. Just like, imagine seeing that on somebody's bio on their law firm site. Like, that would be completely out of place. I don't think that has any place on a resume either.
Yeah, I think we had a rule that everything from high school came off the resume. The only exception we had was Eagle Scout. Eagle Scout was allowed to stay on, and everything else had to come off. I think that was the rule.
If you're a National Merit Scholar, maybe that's something else you could leave on there.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Also, weird interests. I've seen some very strange interests. I think a little bit, I think your personality can come out in your interview. I don't need to know that your passion is ballroom dancing.
On a resume, you're talking.
On a resume. I think that's a little strange, but teach his own.
And you know what? I'm glad you said, because to be honest, I think there's a pretty good split across employers in law firms about interests on a resume. It's probably the one that's the most, I don't want to say controversial, but kind of has the largest split. Like, people will either kind of really want to see those because they want to get that maybe insight into their personality. And then others, a lot of people are, and maybe even more so, are in your camp who really don't need to see it there. And it may cost you if it's kind of a weird interest or something that may not jive. And so I think it's good for candidates to just be aware that, if they put interests on their resume, it could be helpful, but it also could be a turnoff, and it may just depend on what the interest is or whatever. But it's just sort of one of those risks that you kind of have to know you're taking. And from there, you just live with it. But that's definitely one that is sort of that, you get about half and half say they want it and half that say they don't. If someone's, go ahead.
I would just be a little bit more vague in that. I mean, if you like ballroom dancing, just say that you enjoy dancing. And if somebody wants to take an interest and ask a follow-up question in the interview, then you can say, actually, this is the kind of dancing I enjoy. Then you can go into it. If you like, I like reading, so I would say, reading is one of my hobbies. Then they could say, what do you like to read? And then you could get to know the person. Laying it all out there, I think, from my perspective, it doesn't allow the opportunity to interact with the interviewee that much.
Yeah. If someone has been out for a couple of years, 2-3 years, and you're seeing their resume come across, after having been practicing for a little bit, and maybe they're wanting to make some type of lateral move, is there anything different that you're looking for there, or something that you're looking out for, as opposed to someone coming right out of law school?
Well, if you actually have the opportunity to practice law, then I think you definitely need to highlight specifically what you did at the firm that you were just at.
Right.
So, and be very specific about interesting things. So if you've taken corporate rep deposition of a high kind of profile defendant, put that in there. If you have specialized in Daubert motions or federal court practice or something in particular that is distinct, I think that's how you can distinguish yourself among other candidates.
Yeah, that's good. So you mentioned the interview before, and I didn't get to ask you specifically about it yet. What are some things that candidates should be thinking about before they get into an interview with you, with your firm, that you're on the lookout for, things that you're maybe either specifically wanting to see, or things that you are sort of red flags that cause you to pause the process and reconsider the person? Kind of what are some of the things in the interview?
I guess one thing that I see pretty frequently is an affiliation with a political entity. And I would say don't put that in there. You don't know the other person, you don't know what their political leanings are.
Right.
So, and you might be able to tell from, their website or some Google searching. But, if you are a diehard Federalist Society member, if you're a diehard the American Constitution Society, I think those are the two entities on the other side.
On either side, right.
Yeah, that's great. But, 50% of the time, the other person is going to be disagreeing with your political leanings. So I would say maybe, don't do that. You don't know. That just seems like a gamble to me that is not really worth it. So I wouldn't talk about politics in your interview. I've had that a couple times.
Yeah.
And then really research the firm that you're doing. If you're a lawyer now, you have access to a lot of resources through county websites or Research Texas, where you can enter in an attorney's name and you can see what that attorney has been working on. So if you're going to be interviewing with a firm or a particular attorney, just go online, take a look at that, see the kind of cases that they're working on, read up on an old case that they had that seemed particularly interesting, and you can get a better feel for the kind of work that you'd be doing there. And then ask questions.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
I heard recently at a CLE Richard Midoff tell a story about how he thought they were at a table at dinner and had a conversation with the lady to his right, and he thought it was super interesting, and so he told his wife on the way home that, I found that conversation great. I thought she was really nice, and I really enjoyed my time. And his wife said, "That's because you just talked about yourself the whole time." and and it's true. People want to talk about themselves. So show an interest in the firm, show an interest in the person, do your research beforehand, let that person tell you about themselves and the work that they're doing. And I think, that would be great.
Yeah. I think that's well said. What was the resource or the database that you referred to just a little bit ago, where they can find kind of the cases that you're working on, that kind of stuff? What was that one?
research.texascourts.gov.
Research.texascourts.gov. Awesome.
Yeah, there's a big push for all the 254 Texas counties to have one centralized repository of all the filings and documents and stuff. So, and it's tied into the Texas filing system.
Awesome. No, I'm glad you said that, and I want to clarify that, and I'll put that link in the notes to this show so people can find that if they're not familiar with it. And that's a good piece of advice there. Well, now as you've gone through the associate track and as you've watched others as well do that alongside you, or maybe now seeing some younger lawyers, what's something that associates can do to make a positive impression within their firm and kind of set themselves up for a positive career trajectory within the firm? What are some of those things?
So Gerald Powell, my practice court professor, gave us a piece of advice, I think as we were leaving practice court, which was, when you show up at the firm, just be the person who says yes. Don't be the person who says no, or I can't, or I don't have the time. So just, I think, being the person who is always going to say yes, first of all, your partners are going to love that. But also then you get a wide range of experience. So if it's, I need somebody to cover this hearing, say, I'm there. I need somebody to do this motion, say, I'll do it. The new case came in the door, who wants to work on it? Me, I do. You're the person that says yes, and you're going to endear yourself to the partners, and you're going to build up valuable experience. And those people who say no, or I don't have the time, they're not getting that.
Yeah. No, I that makes total sense. What advice would you have for associates in terms of thinking about how to start building their own client base, their own business development type of activity? How should they be approaching that as a young lawyer, or should they be at all when they're just kind of getting started in those first 3 years of practice?
Well, it's never a bad thing to start thinking about how you can bring in business. It's a little different in my line of work. There's not a lot of repeat clients for,
right.
personal injury.
Right.
If you have one, that's a big red flag. But you're,
right.
I guess one thing is, there's a lot of websites where you can list yourself doing a particular kind of work. So AVO is one that comes to mind. AVO's a little tricky because starting off, you may not have a great number, and they don't really disclose that to you. But, when you type in Matt Greenberg attorney, there's two of us in Houston. So
wow.
That's a little harder.
Oh, wait, we were supposed to be interviewing the other one today. No,
good luck. I don't know him at all, but
neither do I.
But
that's funny.
So you can do the different kind of websites. Actually, in my line of work, if a case is referred to me, I'm actually under a duty to bring that case into the firm. I can't hold that out for my own, or kind of carve it away from my own practice. So it gets a little different. But one thing I think, and my current boss was saying this to us the other day, is just to let everyone know the kind of work that you do. I went to law school probably with 100 people. Larger law schools, 200-300 people. There's only a fraction of those that are going to be doing the same kind of work that you're doing. So let other people know the kind of work that you're doing. so that when somebody says, "Oh, I need a merger and acquisitions lawyer," you know exactly who to go to. I've referred tons of people to different kinds of lawyers. I've never referred anybody to somebody other than one of my classmates. So
yeah,
well,
yeah, exactly.
So I have the name in my head of if you want an M&A lawyer, if you want a family lawyer, I know exactly who I'm going to send you to, and they're my classmates. So so I guess part of that is staying in touch with your alumni base. I'm a member of the Baylor Lawyers Facebook group, and it's daily people who are asking for referrals, or I need a family lawyer in San Antonio, or I need a business lawyer in Dallas. So stay connected with that. Go to your local alumni events and just kind of let people know that you're the blank lawyer in the group.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. You're totally right. I was just in that group this morning looking at some stuff, and there are, every day, multiple referral opportunities there. And like you said, it's all happening within the alumni base. And so whatever law school you went to, I'm sure something similar is happening and available there. And the key is, I think you mentioned this, is you got to let people know what you're doing, and very specifically, because I think if people just know you're a litigator, that's better than just a lawyer, but it's still pretty broad. And so if someone's needing a fiduciary litigator because of a contested will, they might not think of you when you said litigator, but they would think of you if you said you were a trust and estates or fiduciary litigator. So like being very specific about what you do, I think, and letting people know that is really the key there, because it's hard to make referrals when they don't know specifically what you do, when that specific fact pattern comes to that person and they're referring that potential client to you, right?
Yes, exactly. Also, I would start, go buy your name as your domain, like your website. So, whatever your name is, .com, see if that's available and buy it. You never know when you want to go out on your own. You got to lock that down.
Absolutely. I know. Actually, I've been meaning to buy my kids' domain names, and I just haven't done it yet.
Yes.
Like 5 years.
I've done that. My wife, my brother and sister.
Yep.
Lock it down.
That's right. Something that comes up quite a bit, and we talk about here, is the kind of the issue of work-life balance and how that plays in to especially younger lawyers as they come into the law firm world and try to obviously excel and do good work as lawyers and learn their craft, and then also I think recognize the overall trend of trying to have an overall healthy life and have other interests and things like that. How have you walked through that? How have you seen that play out in these years that you've been an associate, and how do you advise young lawyers to kind of think about it?
Well, I've actually been very lucky to get to work with partners who have a great sense of kind of a work-life balance. Although I never really liked the term work-life balance, because that almost insinuates some kind of equality. They're never going to be equal. You're
right.
Unless you're part-time, it's not going to be equal. Work is going to be the majority of what you do during the day. So, what I would encourage younger lawyers to think about is, don't think about it as a balance. What I've done is a carve out. And I've kind of made it known, I want a particular time of the day to myself. So my daughter goes to bed, she starts her bedtime routine 6:30 to 7. That's it. So that hour I want to be home. So what I've said is, I want to be home for that. I don't really want to make exceptions for that. You can have every other hour in the day you can have. But I've carved out that I want that to be my time. And I think if you can kind of isolate or identify one particular thing that you're going to say is mine for your personal life, then and then just let it be known, this is mine, you can have everything else. Then, it would be unreasonable to deny you that 1 hour of the day, right? So for me, it's like, if you want me back in the office at 7:30 and work till midnight, that's fine. I don't care. I've identified for me personally, that's the important time. that's what's going to make it easier for me to continue to do my job and to feel good about it.
Right.
And so just, make that known, make it something reasonable. I mean, an hour is not unreasonable.
Right. Right.
So, you want me here at 6 a.m., that's fine. I mean, I really don't care. I just want that hour.
Yeah, right.
So that's what I would just do. Don't think about it as a balance, because I think that would drive you crazy. Just pick something that's important to you. If you want to take a break and go work out at the gym, in the evening or something, just say that's what you want to do.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and that's good advice. I do think it's important what you said about the expectation of it being in some type of perfect balance or harmony is just unrealistic, especially as a young lawyer, and really at any point if you're practicing law in private practice, but especially in those early years when you're learning the craft and trying to set yourself up with the firm that you're with and develop your reputation, all those things. Like you said, the balance just isn't the right word for it.
It's not, but I'll say this much: that's coming from my perspective, from seeing my wife as a working mother and lawyer. That's a whole different idea. Having to juggle those two things is incredibly difficult. So for anybody who's a lawyer and a mom, I would just say be at a firm who understands that complexity and difficulty, and who will accommodate you for that. Because I think the places that do that see the benefits reaped from that kind of approach. The law firms who don't do that, I think they're going to see the negative sides of that. So,
yeah. No, for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned Anna. I think I told you I did reach out to her to come on the show as well. So, and I asked her first because obviously she's the better half. So I wanted to get her.
I don't disagree.
but we have not been successful yet. So put a bug in her ear that she has to come on next to kind of talk about her perspective, because like you said, it is going to be much different from that standpoint for sure. I'm sure among others. So definitely want to be able to talk to her. Well, we're kind of wrapping up here and running out of time. And I do want to say thanks for being with us and taking the time. The last thing I want to ask you about before we do our rapid fires is just if you have any advice to folks that have maybe been out practicing for a couple years, just doing some general litigation or maybe even on the transactional side, but are still trying to figure out what, type of practice they want to have and build. Just maybe your pitch for doing the type of work that you do and how they might get involved or maybe make that transition to the plaintiff side of the ledger or kind of anything along those lines. What might you say to them?
I would say first, to try to find the litigation aspect of whatever you do. So there's all of my peers and friends from law school that I know that work in a bigger law firm who do maybe transactional work, probate work, they all have a litigation department in their firm, right? So, because if you do the commercial work for somebody and then it goes into litigation, they just pass it down the hall. So you can try to, take on more responsibility in your same firm, but on the litigation side. And then from there, you build up litigation experience, and then you're pretty much valuable to whatever kind of, work you want to do. I think litigation is the most exciting field to be in, obviously.
Right.
It combines all aspects of practice in law. I have a really good friend who does mergers and acquisitions. He doesn't want to take a deposition. He doesn't want to be in the courtroom. He's not interested in that.
Right.
For me, that is what I find to be the most rewarding part of my job, is actually doing depositions, being in court. My favorite thing is actually arguing motions before a judge. I like that. So if those kinds of things, I think about it as more of like the surgeons of the law practice.
Yeah.
If you want to get in there and get your hands dirty, then this kind of work is for you.
Yeah. Well, good. Thanks for that. All right. Well, we've got a few just rapid fire questions to throw at you. If you are ready, we will knock these out.
Okay.
All right. Name one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
Drive.
Awesome. What habit has been key to your success?
Sleep.
That's a popular one now. So good. Yeah. Favorite app or productivity tool?
OneNote.
Oh yeah, good. And then, of course, your favorite legal movie?
A Few Good Men.
Oh man, that's making a comeback. It's My Cousin Vinny and A Few Good Men, I think, 1 and 2 thus far.
Oh, it's so much better than My Cousin Vinny. Are you kidding me?
Well, so I don't know if you know, but we're doing some deep dives into legal movies on the podcast, also kind of sporadically, and we did My Cousin Vinny kind of right out of the gate. And we're recording A Few Good Men actually this week. It'll already be out by the time people are listening to this episode. So if you're interested in A Few Good Men, it will be there when you're listening to this episode. So go check it out. But excited to do that one for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, thank you again for taking the time to be with us. Really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. My thanks again to Matt Greenberg for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you subscribe so you don't miss another episode? And would you let your friends and colleagues in the Texas legal community know about the show and share this with them so that they can be part of this community and we can serve as many of you as possible? And then also, if you could rate and review the show in iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and listen to the show, that would be great as well. Of course, if you have any suggestions or thoughts about the show, or I could be of help to you in any way, please email directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. One quick note that we are currently searching for a 3 to 7 year insurance defense associate for a prominent civil trial firm in Austin. So if you or someone you know might be interested, you can reach out to me directly, or you can find the job posting on our Varsity Search page on LinkedIn, and you can actually directly apply there. Either way is great. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel here with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.